Let's Connect series is a series of interactive meetings and presentations that we try to do a few times a year. Ideal would be every month, but it takes a lot of sweat equity. So uh, the opinions of the speakers here, or contributors, are not necessarily those of the CUSJ or endorsed. And as you see, the meeting is being recorded. Today's meeting is about who killed Sir William. And if you wonder who Sir William is, he was basically the founder, initiator for starting a workmen's compensation kind of system. And right now, the workers' rights have been eroded, and Marion Endicott and Steve Mantis will give us an overview of what is going on. In the series Let's Connect, UU Social Justice, our speakers today are Steve Mantis and Marion Endicott, talking about who killed Sir William, the death of workmen's compensation. Steve Mantis was injured in an industrial accident in 1978, losing his left arm. He went through the WCB system and saw firsthand how it failed for many injured workers. In 1984, he helped found the Thunder Bay and District Injured Workers Support Group. He has been active ever since, working to improve the lives of injured and disabled workers across Canada. In 1996, Steve has been building links with the academics to study the consequences of work injury, including emphasizing the need for long-term tracking of injured workers in the compensation system. Steve was the community lead in the former RAACWI, Research Action Alliance on the Consequence of Work Injury. Marion Endicott worked serving injured workers at the Community Legal Clinic in Toronto, Ontario for 40 years. Her work engaging in casework, law reform, legal education, and community organizing was brought together in many ways during the 8-year community-based research project, which is the subject of the book, Who Killed Sir William? So I would say, take it away as soon as I get out of here. Okay, there you go.
All right. Well, I'm going to start us off, and I'll start by thanking you so much for inviting Steve and myself to present to you today. We always enjoy presenting to people, but I feel like this is a particularly special crowd because you are a crowd committed to social justice. So that feels very, very special to be here. And Ellen, you were commenting earlier about, how many people come out to events and possibly with the idea of fun or as being a factor. And I don't know that there's much fun embedded in the presentation that we have today, but in our work, Steve and I, whenever we would do an agenda, always one of the items on the agenda was to have fun, because it is important. So we are talking today about justice for injured workers, and we want to talk about the history of the injured workers movement and workers' compensation as seen from Ontario. And that is a very long story, but we will do a short version of it. And we want to begin by basically saying thank you to those who have come before us. For Canadian workers have fought for justice for a long, long time, as we know. And within the context of workers' compensation, they have, over the decades, won many improvements. However, at this time, the present situation is very bad. There's been a slide, a tumble that has been going on for years. So the present situation, very quick overview, is that there have been changes in the law and the policy that severely limit access for workers to the system, and even if they do get in, severely limit the level of compensation that they will receive. Some stats are that between 15,000 and 20,000 serious injuries occur every year that result in permanent impairment, permanent disability. Of those people, 45% of them uh, become and remain unemployed. And these are workers who had jobs before their injury. And of those, 20% of them end up in poverty. That is, along with their families. And a further 25% are near poverty. Uh, Only 20% of them receive any form of long term benefits, and it may not even be adequate for sure. And as you can imagine, a large number of these people suffer mental health challenges, 45%, in fact, according to the research that's been done. These are not mental health issues that came out of the injury itself, but came out of the problems with the compensation system. And the next slide we have is a quote from an injured worker. I call it a cry. This is from Beryl Brown from February 2005. She's somebody that both Steve and I knew very well, or know very well. She says, I feel sometimes like I am in a shell, like a little nut in a shell because it's so hard. You don't want to burden anybody, complain about pain. You don't want to. They don't understand sometimes. They're tired of you to complain. Pain, 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 pain. I know if they had paid me my money, I would have taken care of my body and my health. I would be at the company working today if they had given me the right medical care. Maybe I'd be there. Who knows? Maybe I'd be in a better field or a different field. But I wouldn't be sitting here today in this kind of agony because they made my condition worse by not paying me my money, by not allowing me medical care. Well, Beryl's situation and feelings are all too common. And yet, the interesting thing is, or the important thing is, that the workers' compensation system was actually founded precisely to prevent this kind of thing. It was set up to support injured workers, not to abandon them. So, the workers' compensation system at this point is 110 years old, and it was really the first part of our social safety net in this country. And we feel like it's really valuable to know our history. Next slide. The ravages of the industrial age on the bodies of the workers in the late 1800s, the beginning of the 1900s, was beginning to trouble the public conscience and the political conscience, and in fact, juries who were having to turn their minds to cases that were being brought before them. And as a result, the actually conservative government of Ontario at the time, in 1910, appointed Sir William Meredith, who himself was a judge and a conservative, to head up a commission of inquiry into what to do about this situation. And he took the job very, very seriously, traveling around the world, holding hearings. And in 1913, he produced a report with recommendations. The next slide shows a picture of Sir William Meredith. And this man, really, the report he produced was remarkable for his insights into his understanding about the class conflict that lay underneath the injuries at work. His report and the legislation that was based on his report are both based on what was known as the historic compromise. Essentially, what they produced was a system in which neither employers nor a worker who is injured should suffer a financial loss, or at least not much of a financial loss. So the historic compromise was that injured workers gave up the right to sue in exchange for a non-adversarial compensation system upon which they could depend in case of injury or disease from work. The slogan of the time was just compensation speedily rendered. There were five basic principles underlying all this. One was that compensation should be for as long as the disability lasts, that the employers would pay but in a collective liability system, that it would be no fault, that it would be run by an independent public agency, and that it be non adversarial. And that understanding that it was supposed to be non adversarial is a critical thing to bear in mind. So these are the fundamental principles of our compensation system, and not only in Ontario, but the Meredith report and principles were adopted all through the country very rapidly after 1915. And but in Ontario, at least at this time in 2026, it's very hard to find these principles being honored. Steve, I'll turn it over to you now.
Thanks, Marion. Okay, there we go. Uh, yeah, so what we've, oh, I'm jumping ahead. Um, yeah, so what, I came along was really the austerity agenda. And we know about that in many parts of our society. In terms of workers' compensation, it looked like that the corporations trumped the disabled workers. The system that was set up to provide support to workers when they became injured or disabled started turning on its head and wanted to really support business and corporations. And there was a big concern about an unfunded liability. That's kind of a strange concept, but in normal insurance, private insurance, the private insurance company has to have enough funds to cover all of their liabilities going forward. Workers' compensation was not set up that way. It was set up more like the Canada Pension Plan or healthcare, which was kind of a pay-as-you-go system because it was a province-wide. There wasn't really the idea that it could fail like a private insurance company. But it created all kinds of challenges. The government really brought in that austerity. They brought in reduction in benefits, more through administrative and policy changes and legislative changes. The big focus was reducing on long-term benefits, which is really those workers who have a permanent lifelong impairment and disability. Those people who need the system most were in the crosshairs of the austerity agenda. And one of the researchers early on included this in talking about the welfareization of disability. That really, Sir William Meredith talked about in his final report that uh, we shouldn't have a system that tries to get away with as little as possible. But that's in fact where we're going with our system. In 2025, our government in Ontario bragged that over $8 billion have been returned to corporations from the accident fund since 2023. Now, to put that in context, there's somewhere around $2 to $2.5 billion that goes out annually now for payments for health care and compensation and administrative fees to run the system. Uh, you see there in 2 years, more than double goes back to corporations. So it was pretty clear. And one of the things that really has spurred that is suppressing of claims. So it's what we are finding that a large proportion of the people who get injured at work don't even claim for accidents because of how the system has really turned its back on workers. Uh, our group, the Ontario Network of Injured Workers Groups, I have been active there since the founding in 1991. There's about 22 local groups across the province. The Ontario Network is that umbrella group that brings together all these local groups to really work on that systemic advocacy at the government level. Uh, um, it's all volunteers. There's no funding from government or any other sources, a very small budget. But it has helped to bring positive changes for workers going forward. One of the things that we have done is to set the vision for what we want the system to look like. And it has been a process that has been renewing itself every 7 or 8, 9 years. Starting in 2004, we developed our first injured workers platform for change. And many of the things that we're talking about here, the collective liability for employers, that the primary purpose is to compensate injured workers and their survivors, that it's inclusive, no fault, that it eliminates experience rating, which is the opposite of the collective liability, are all some of those same principles that Sir William Meredith brought forward 100 years earlier. And we're kind of going, look, they worked for most of that 100 years as we moved into this austerity agenda and this idea um, of holding individual businesses, individual employers responsible for any of the costs of their workers being hurt, has created a little industry to oppose claims by workers and finding ways to keep costs down for employers. We continued looking at a number of these issues, that there should be compensation that reflects the full loss of income. To eliminate deeming. Deeming is a process that came in 1990 that said, oh, well, as the system, we're going to determine that you're able to do a job, even if you don't have the job, even if the doctor says you're not capable of doing that job, even if no one will hire you for that job. We're going to assume you have that job, and we're going to subtract the wages that you would have earned in that job from any compensation you get from workers' compensation. When Marion showed the numbers, only 20% of any kind of long-term benefits, most of them have been deemed to be working when they're not, and then their income is reduced accordingly. That we wanted to have a full cost of living coverage, and that we wanted workers to be protected when they moved into retirement times, that rehabilitation needed to be a key component, and it had to be a partnership with the injured workers, not something that gets imposed, but puts that worker at the front and center. Also help in terms of finding suitable employment. Along the line, we know that people with disabilities in our society have a very high rate of unemployment. It's somewhere around 60% rate of unemployment. So that once you become disabled, there's big barriers. So we're saying the system should be helping, and that there should be more of a public rehabilitation system that would be able to help along the way. As we have continued to work, that platform for change that we developed in 2004 got renewed in 2015 and again in 2022 has now resulted in the private members bill that was introduced a couple of months ago, December 8th, by the NDP critic for workers' compensation, Lise Vaugeois. And As we see here, it's an act to enact the Meredith Act, fair compensation for injured workers. So we worked hand in hand with elected representatives and the legal counsel at Queen's Park to bring forward that platform for change, putting it into all that legal lingo, and it's now in the House for coming up for second reading on April the 2nd. This was a very exciting time for injured and disabled workers to be at the forefront of creating and writing legislation that reflected their goals and aspirations going forward. And as an organization, the Ontario Network of Injured Workers Groups have had lots of different strategies. One has been our legal strategy. Here's a picture of the victory at the Supreme Court of Canada back in 2003. This was a case that was coming from Nova Scotia, where the Nova Scotia Compensation Board said, "Oh, if you have chronic pain, we're just going to give you 4 weeks benefit and then kick you off." And that's discrimination based on the type of disability. And we packed that courthouse with injured and disabled workers. Those 9 judges up front had to look at us throughout the case, and we were successful at overturning that, which had impact right across the country. Back to you, Marion.
Okay, so the corporate agenda, or what we also call the neoliberal agenda that Steve was talking about, introduced many problems for injured workers, as Steve has outlined. But part of the problem directly for injured workers was in our efforts. I say I was not an injured worker, but I was an advocate for injured workers, and we worked together. And what we found was when we were going to the Minister of Labor or going to the Compensation Board to talk about real problems and seeking reforms, we began to have very dull eyes and dour faces looking at us, kind of going, well, why should we believe you? Yeah, you're telling us your story, but who knows what's happening, else is happening. And this was very distressing and confounding because this was a new thing in our experience. And so the Ontario Network of Injured Workers Groups began to ask itself, well, what else can we do? We do demonstrations, we speak to people, we do media, but I don't know, it's not having effect. So the group asked itself, well, what if we had research and had academics who could help prove our situation, help us make the case? And as a result of that, there were efforts made to do something along those lines. And we met with we found academics, we met with academics, and we wanted to work with them to understand the problems and to look for solutions. We wanted them to track long-term outcomes, economic outcomes, employment, health, mental health, physical health of workers with permanent disabilities. This is really important. Like the compensation system would do research also, but they would tend to research like a medical device or that kind of thing, which is important. But they really refused to look at how the system was serving injured workers. Was it working or not? The compensation system itself. We were hoping to work with the academics to develop a framework for the proposed improvements and, in general, to use the knowledge coming from the research to put public pressure on decision makers for change. And out of that, we got a really dynamic research project put together. Next slide. And this was called the Research Action on the Alliance of Consequences of Work Injury. It existed from 2004 to 2012. Steve, as mentioned in his introduction, was the community lead on this project. And then there was an academic, Emile Tompa, here from Toronto, who was the academic lead. And this research project got funding, significant funding from SSHRC, the Social Sciences and Humanities Research Council, and brought together universities, brought together injured workers groups, well, particularly the Ontario Network of Injured Worker Groups, ONIWIG, and legal clinics like where I worked to work together for research. It produced 26 very useful studies, and it produced, well, many more things, including training for the community. Um, so it was so successful. But the next two slides highlight a few of the successes. I'm only going to mention a couple. Under achievements, it achieved a sustainable relationship of mutual respect between the community and the academy. Now, this was very interesting, right? Because you can imagine academics are told they shouldn't be friends with the people that they are studying because that will make their research, not neutral. It will cause it to be disputed, perhaps. And injured workers, when they're in this room of academics, are looking at them and saying, well, academics, they live in those ivory towers. How on earth are they ever going to be able to, understand what we're going through? That's impossible. Well, through the process of this research project, those two communities, those two groups really found that together they really strengthened each other's abilities. Out of it, we got proved scientific evidence for the community that could be used in the quest for social justice, in workers' compensation in this case. Then on the next slide, under measurable success, one of the things that was so important was that we produced out of all that injured workers speaking up with knowledge of the compensation system and knowledge of the research. And even through that process of that knowledge that was gained, that confidence that was gained, that helped to strengthen the injured worker organizations themselves. And we found that, initially when we started, there really wasn't, except for that big grant that we got, there wasn't specific money to do the research around injured workers and the compensation system itself. That wasn't a buzz in the air, and there wasn't really funding, and there weren't really that many researchers who were tuned into that. And through this process, we found an actual shift in the research world towards increased interest and curiosity and funding following that for the experience of injured workers. So the experience was so useful, next slide, that Steve and I wrote this book, and it's called Who Killed Sir William? A Community University Research Alliance Seeks Justice for Injured Workers. By now you will know who Sir William is, Sir William Meredith, the philosophical, so to speak, founder of the system. And in this book, we have Sir William kind of appearing as a ghost every once in a while. These little black bits, you can see him there, and he's commenting from a historical perspective on what he's seeing going on at this time. We hope that this book will serve as a guide and an inspiration to other people who will do community-based research, are interested in that. It tells a lot about injured workers and workers' compensation, but it is also useful in a general way around community-based research. It doesn't have to be injured workers. It could be many other communities needing social justice. One of the things that we spend a fair amount of time, we'll dedicate a chapter to in the book, was, and an aspect of the research project, was the emergence of the Injured Worker Speaker School. This was an absolutely fabulous thing. The idea of it actually began before the research project came into place, but the research project brought money and resources and more people into it so that we were really able to build something fantastic. And the idea of this school was for injured workers to slowly, over a program of 3 hours a week, over 12 to 14 weeks, coming together. There would be food, there'd be fun, but basically people were building their public speaking skills and building their knowledge of workers' compensation, the knowledge of the history, the knowledge of policy, the knowledge of the research that was being produced. Part of the dynamic and all that is that people would come in as individuals, often, quite frightened, but, thinking, okay, this may be a good idea. But one of the things they came out of it was, oh, it's not just me. I'm not alone, and we are not alone. the whole business of studying history and finding out that the workers' compensation that was treating them so badly was actually created to help, not to hinder, was a revelation and something really important to learn. Next slide. This shows a photograph of participants in the Injured Worker Speaker School. The photograph is in the clinic where I used to work. Next. So here's a little more, this slide is a little bit more about the Injured Worker Speaker School. One of the, as I've indicated, the history and understanding those Meredith principles was critical. When, as we were having people build their speaking capacity, one of the key things was for them to be able to tell their story and to then weave into it the Meredith principles. Did their story show a Meredith principle being upheld, or did it show a Meredith principle lost? And then they could that way be saying, okay, well, we need that principle. One of the sort of the slogans, shall we say, or the headings of the school was to move from venting to convincing. And because people would come in mad and kind of inarticulate, and through the school they were able to gain poise and be able to truly convince. The school ended with a graduation ceremony. Next slide. Here's a photo of the graduates and others. There'd be a podium, as you can see, it's quite makeshift, but you know, it still served the purpose. And the injured workers would get up and do a 3-minute speech, more or less. We would have a panel as well that would listen to the workers and give comments on their what they had to say. One of the people in this photograph, the man, kind of the taller man in the center with a tie, he's an NDP member of provincial parliament. And he was so inspired by what he heard. He was next day, the House was in session, and he went there and he used his opportunity to speak to basically reiterate all these stories that he had just heard. So the people in this photograph, their speeches are retold in Hansard as a result, which is kind of neat. Okay, Steve.
Yeah, as we leave the example of the Injured Worker Speaker School, there was so much interest in that program that it spread across Ontario into more than a dozen different communities. Each time it would be modified to fit the demands and the experience of the participants in those communities, all people working for social justice, people with lived experience who had really been oppressed. Um, you know, our whole kind of a history with our injured workers movement has been to try to stand up for our rights using our own lived experience as well as strategy and tools to provide help, real live help for workers. We have a list, and this is only a partial list of some of our successes. You saw earlier, we're all volunteers. We have next to no money, but by coming together, by being fearless and persistent, we were able to win a number of things. The maintenance therapy was that if you have a lifelong injury or disability, that you need therapy for the rest of your life. Workers' compensation, the WSIB would say, we're going to give you 4 weeks or 6 weeks and you're done. You should be all better. Well, a lifelong disability doesn't end after 4 to 6 weeks. Oops. They had regressive policies on return to work. They modified those. In 2007, a bill was brought in that it increased our cost of living over a 3-year period. It was 7.5% at that point. That translated into $750 million. That's what was added to the bottom line in terms of the liabilities of the WSIB. So here we are, a ragtag group of folks in one issue is getting $750 million into the pockets of workers who are mainly unemployed, facing many physical and mental health issues going forward. And we've talked about the Meredith Act that was just introduced. Once again, it's so exciting for us to be able to feel like, we're able to have kind of help set a vision for the future. Oops, going the wrong way. Of course, our Research Action Alliance was a big success. There was an improvement in 2015 around survivors. If one member of the family was killed at work or suffered from an occupational disease that ended up with them dying, there was improvements for the family. We finally won after 40 something years. A cost of living happening on a regular basis. This put into that long-term liability number about $2 billion. Again, huge amount of money for workers most in need. And we've done 3 presentations now at the United Nations as part of the Convention on the Rights of People with Disabilities, really bringing our issues into an international stage. Um, our families have gotten involved. And here's a picture of 2 youngsters at one of our June 1st rallies. June 1st is Injured Workers Day in Ontario. It's spreading across the country, and there's real interest in the United States to come forward as well. One of the issues that we have been working on and still work on is that many workers are not covered by workers' compensation in Ontario. 30% of the workforce do not have any kind of help in that way. And these youngsters are focusing on that issue. Another issue that has gotten a lot of attention is that when you go see your family doctor or mental health psychologist or psychiatrist or other mental health or healthcare providers, oftentimes the compensation board, the WSIB, does not follow the professional advice in terms of what your needs are and what your capabilities are. We were approached by a psychologist in Sudbury at the time and said, "What can I do? The WSIB is making my patients sicker." And we worked together with a number of medical folks as well as the Ontario Federation of Labor and developed a massive report that we took to the ombudsman in Ontario and the government at hand. Uh, Another quote from an injured worker, Rosario. Rosario says, "To tell you the truth, you never can believe how an injured worker can feel to be out of the workforce. You feel destroyed by society. You feel like nothing in the family because, at the beginning, the wife, the children, they have compassion. They say, 'Oh, poor daddy, poor my husband.' But when the story is too long, if he is disabled for life, there the problem comes because, the wives at the beginning, they do a lot of things, but then they finish the patients. The wife has to shoulder everything and run the house. The children, they have to stop school to help the family. So everybody gets nervous. Um, you know, having those lived experiences put front and center has been a big part of our strategy. In terms of our resources and moving forward to kind of raise awareness, we're asking for your help, to share some of this information with your networks, with your congregations, your families, your coworkers. I'm based in Thunder Bay. This is the website for the Thunder Bay Injured Workers Support Group. We have regular meetings on Tuesday morning on Zoom from 10 until 12. It's open to anyone. Um, there's always guest speakers. I see you have Charlie Angus coming up in April. We had Charlie earlier this week as our guest speaker. One of the research big initiatives that followed our Research Action Alliance on the Consequences of Work Injury, the CRWDP, was the Center for Research on Work Disability Policy. And Injured Workers Online is probably the best and most comprehensive website about injured workers and workers' compensation in Ontario and really right across the country. Uh, oops. Um, Injured workers so often feel like they're invisible, that they're just left behind. They kind of disappear from society, from their social networks. And Barbara here really captures it in her poetry. Since 1999, I have been left in the land of assumption. No one ever asks me how I would survive. The who I am has traveled in time as my case has been a puzzle on countless minds. While I am left to wonder why society has moved on and left me behind, I feel invisible, like a box locked away without a key. No need to worry about what you cannot see. And that really kind of sums up how many injured workers feel. And a lot of our work, especially with our big research project, is to provide people with a lot of those social connections, reestablishing friendships and social networks that helps as a movement, but it helps those individuals gain confidence that they can actually survive and be able to have a life going forward. We want to thank you so much for inviting us here today and for your time. You can contact us anytime. There's our email addresses. If you're interested in our book, Who Killed Sir William, which is really a lot of it is about how to ensure that that experience, the lived experience of people who are going through these challenges, who face many of these barriers we talked about, to be front and center in a project, to ensure that their voices, their hopes, their aspirations are captured going forward and become strong partners with our allies. And if you're interested in plugging into regular news about our struggles, send me an email there at smantis@tbaytel.net. I can sign you up for uh, our e-news with our provincial organization, the Ontario Network of Injured Workers Groups, and you can kind of keep up to date with a lot of what's going on. And with that, we would like to invite you to ask any questions, share your experiences with workplace injury and disease, and let's hear from you.
Okay, thank you, Steve and Marion. And yeah, very good. Who would like to ask some questions? We still have quite a number of minutes to answer, having the interaction if you want. Kate Chung is saying in the chat that the book is in the Toronto Library, and she finds it a very good read as well as educational. And Laurie says, I'm grateful for the ONEWG. They have helped me to keep moving forward, not give up. Thank you. Great meeting today. And so we had a little bit of sound problems, but I think people persevered.
Well,
Any
maybe we can start it off just by asking, has anyone on the call today had a workplace accident or illness? Just, raising hands or your electronic hand, um, like that. Anybody out there
There we go.
have have that lived experience?
We're also curious. Oh, somebody else has their hand up, but we are also curious if people, if even if you yourself were not suffered an injury at work, is somebody in your family had that? 'Cause usually there's somebody in the family.
When you have been treated as if you're a scammer, uh, almost like you're a criminal because you're asking for something that is your legal right, and you're questioned about it over and over and over again. It really takes its toll. One of the researchers in our big research project, Joan Eakin, she was a sociologist at the University of Toronto at the Dalla Lana School of Public Health. She did a research project on what was the experience of both workers and employers in small workplaces, under 20 or 25 employees. And she coined the phrase the discourse of abuse, that workers were subject to persistent, ongoing questioning their personal integrity, whether they were actually lying about their condition. And you know, that really wears on you, and it can lead to that situation where you don't trust anybody, where, and she talked about too how what this did, that this is how the system worked, uh, that it led to the breakdown of long-term relationships at work that were irreparable. That meant you weren't able to successfully go back to that employer that you had a good relationship with over decades, because of this suspicion that is generated by the system. This was one of the issues we tried to address in our knowledge mobilization. We had what we called blue sky meetings with management at the WSIB around the stigma that is pervasive of injured workers. We were able to gain the support of senior management over a number of years, where together with them, we developed a 9-point action plan where they recognized that they were the cause of some of that stigma, and had an attempt to try to identify and eliminate where they were causing that in their processes. So, while we were involved in a big research project, it wasn't just about research for research. It was about making the changes in the lives. And we've just seen so many people's lives, I hate to say ruined, but headed in that way. And that stigma that causes a lot of that mental stress, has been verified again and again. Another research study in 2021, 2022 found that the interaction between the case managers at the WSIB and the injured workers were causing mental illness in the people that they're supposed to help. So here's a system, founded by Sir William Meredith to help workers, now turning into one that is making it worse going forward.
But what I will speak about is that if I hadn't gone out west to the Institute of Study and Treatment of Pain, which is where CGIMS, maybe some of you have heard of it, maybe you haven't. It was invented in the late 70s by Dr. Chan Gunn. He worked for WSIB and BC. He received the Order of Canada and the Order of British Columbia for creating this. It's basically treating um, uh, soft tissue damage using specific needles that are based on acupuncture principles. If I hadn't gone out there and I was basically glued together by all my soft tissue damage by 2012, I wouldn't be here describing this. Now, for whatever reason, uh, it's been banned in Ontario since he invented it. And it was a fluke that I found out about it, and I went out there and it saved my life literally. So, the WSIB won't, well, I don't know. I can't speak to that. But since I went out there, I've had 19 extra concussions. I mean, it just goes on and on and on. But, what is it? So at least when he invented it, and the stats that I know of back then in 2012, 70% of injured workers suffer from soft tissue damage. Now, my soft tissue damage was so deep that for the foundational injury, that the needles that were invented for CGIMS couldn't get to the foundation of the injuries. So, I guess many of my questions are surrounded by why would I understand why the system wouldn't allow this treatment to be accepted. So, I mean, I could go on and on and on and on and on, and I don't want to because I'm past that. But I'd like to know who is behind the corruption of this? Who's behind, taking away all these extra possible treatments from, I'd say probably 1988, 1990. I would think it would be part of the conservative government because they also affected the building of federal co-ops. By 1988 or 1990, they stopped building co-ops. I mean, it just goes on and on and on. But I mean, we're here, it's 2025. There's clearly there's a lot of work being done, but I mean, you wouldn't believe my story even if I told you. But, I was very blessed with being able to get enough money for my long-term disability from the school board to go get treated and be here talking about it today. So, I mean, it's just, I could write a movie on it. But anyway.
Go ahead, Marion.
So, Rita, I, I would like to answer your question or try to answer it about where all this comes from, but I don't want to do it just right now. I want to, but I would say, it would be very neat to get a speaker school going that that you could be part of too, and be able to say what you'd like to say in a in that venue. But I just while you were talking, somebody else had their hand up, Siva Arul, and I don't know whether that person had hoped to speak or just had their hand up because they had had an injury. So I'd just like to um, check about that, if that's okay.
Siva, did you want to share some of your experience?
Yes, thank you so much, IWC and Steve, for the time today. Yes, I'm one of the injured workers speaker class. I was graduated. Yes, I want to share my experience. First of all, thank you so much, IWC. Today I'm here. I having lunch. Thank you so much. And all the workers, legal workers, they helped me. It's already, I was from 8 years, my injuries. My workplace injury was happened. I was working under the car. I got injury. I was forced to quit me the job because I was work 15 days. I cannot able to work continue with my one hand. So I able to quit the job. I cannot continue. I just voluntarily resigned. So what happened? I cannot make it. So I want to. My hand start bleeding. So I quit. Then I don't have a chance. I apply EI. Then one of the legal clinic, they supported me, go to the IWC. They will really help you. So I came there. The reception really helped me. Name is Corinne, and she helped me. And it's a long journey. It's not the case going into more than a year. I fight it, and I got a. It's my employer didn't participate to appeal the workplace injury. He's tried to hide me. So what happened? All the support gave me injured workers consultant, and it's a long journey to fight. I got the cases outcome is positive, but how the injured workers treat it as a double SAP is really like treat me as a criminal. So I learned from injured workers speaker class. I'm not alone. I'm not only one person deserve. There is other participant. They deserve more than me. But I couldn't. Still, I have a mental depressed. I came from all the way from my back home. I moved from civil war. I saved from the land's mine, the bombs. I know disability at the point. I came here, I live. The Canada is the best country. It's not anymore. Canada is not like anymore. I came from 35 years. But the WSP system, how they treat every worker, is very, it's not the way it was Canada. So it's all deeming, and they're not going through the cases carefully and denied. Thank you so much. This is my thank you so much. I want to speak. The reason was I'm the IWC. They gave me a support. I always salute the people. I never forget. Thank you so much, Steve, and for giving me the time. Thank you. Bye bye, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you, Ziva. That's very good. Thank you for sharing. The way they are treating you is basically as a criminal, even then, you know, and it's just unbelievable how they intimidate you. Anyway, I see Jim Laurie has his hand up. Please go on, Jim.
Oh, it's me, I think.
No, Jim Laurie is also on. Yeah.
I just want to say, Rita, I feel for you about being bullied the way you were. You know, when you think about it, not always injuries are necessary that, but injury can be many things. But I know, I mean, I was never like injured out on a job technically. I used to deliver a Topical Guard on my street, and I fell and injured the fifth metatarsal my right foot. It has never bothered me, but you know, I was verbally bullied, but like school and all that. So, you know, bullying can go anywhere, not only on the workplace, but it can be many places. And I feel for you, and I hope that eventually that everything works out for you and you heal, you know, in the long run.
Thanks, Jim. As my twin brother says, they haven't met my twin sister, so we'll see what happens.
Yeah, whatever will be straw.
Yeah, thanks.
You know, Jim,
I just like to know, has anybody had any experience with these lawyers that advertise all the time? If you're injured on the job, just call us. No charge. What is the word?
a couple of responses there, Jim and James. In terms of that, the lawyers saying, yeah, we'll help you. It's kind of a crapshoot in terms of the experience we've heard back from injured workers. Yeah, it's no charge, but what we're going to do is we're going to take between 15 and 35% of any settlement that we're able to achieve. And the lawyers then oftentimes focus on kind of those lump sum settlements that then they can kind of recoup that largest amount from. Everyone's not the same. There are a few lawyers out there that will be able to access funding from Legal Aid Ontario, which they have to be dedicated because the level of funding they get is very low compared to traditional lawyers. Certainly there are some good representatives, and there have been some good success. But I would definitely be wanting to ask for references and hear from other people in terms of how that really kind of works out. When Jim talked about, that injury and how uh, he he saw kind of some of those challenges or barriers. We're presently doing a research project here in Thunder Bay with Lakehead University looking at the impact on family members of one of their breadwinners being injured at work. And we had a focus group just Tuesday evening this week. And we had people talking about how their injured member of their family is treated without respect going to the healthcare system. But that if the uninjured member of the family is there supporting them, advocating for them, that dynamic changes. And it just kind of speaks to both the pervasiveness of the stigma and ways that we can, by being together, by supporting each other, by supporting our family member. There was some note in the chat where they had previous experience accompanying people to try to wend their way through one of our public systems can be so important. So, that social justice on an individual basis, oftentimes is that lending that helping hand. On this systemic basis, it's getting involved in that larger effort to make our public systems work better for all of us together. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Steve. I see one more question by Lynn Kay. What is the experience with the legal aid clinic for injured workers based in Ontario or based in Toronto even? Yeah.
Well, I'm not sure. I guess if you're asking about what people have experienced in those legal clinics, I can't specifically answer. I worked in one for 40 years.
Your volume is very low.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh boy. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, it's a little bit better. Let's try that.
Ugh. Okay, sorry.
It's okay.
So I worked in a legal clinic, Injured Workers Consultants, that's in Toronto, 40 years. So there's another one, IAVGO, Injured Workers Industrial Accident Victims Group of Ontario, and then there's a health and safety legal clinic that also does workers' compensation. Those legal clinics all provide services at no charge. The people who work there are on salary, so there's no incentive, in terms of what Steve was describing, these lawyers who put their shingle out and say they'll do the work for free. And the legal clinics are dedicated to really listening to people and taking on their cases really well, and also to bring the people that they serve into the larger community of injured workers. Each clinic usually has like a group of injured workers that meet, often, get them hooked up with the Ontario Network of Injured Worker Groups, all that kind of thing. Now, the legal aid system is under, these clinics are under the Ontario legal aid system, and legal aid has rules, which includes like, financial rules. So if you're fairly wealthy, then you can't get the help. At the clinic I worked at, we didn't really worry about that because anybody who was injured, was obviously having financial difficulties. So it wasn't a big deal, but I can't speak for the other clinics. So I don't know if that helps with your answer, your question, I mean.
Glenn Shore has something about the ONIWG has been an inspiration for us forming an injured worker justice movement in the US. Thanks. Thanks so much for your guidance. Okay, great to hear from you, Glenn. And thank you so much, Steve and Marion, for giving this presentation. It was so very much informative and helpful, I think, for a lot of people, and that there is hope. That is also very important, that fighting actually helps. And because sometimes you think you're banging your head against the wall, nothing happens except when you get a very sore head. I thank you very much for all coming to be here on Saturday afternoon when you could be doing something else, even though it depends on where you are, if it is too cold or not. And thank you for the presentation. And we will see you again on the 28th of March when we have Bruce Knott coming. We are going away with the flame lit within us to be vigilant and to keep vigilant for all the injustice that is there for a lot of people, and to fight that we are fighting for justice for all. So thank you for coming here.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye now. Yeah.
Thank
Bye.
you. Bye.